Hello everyone, I'm Ashish Bhardwaj, a DPS alumni working in the development sector. I welcome you all to ALMA Talks, an initiative of DPS Alumni Network. Today in this series, Living Your Dreams, we have Mr. Vivek Anand from 1979 batch and Mr. Gurpreet Singh from 1988 batch. Both of them are based in Gurgaon, and these gentlemen will today share what they have done, the path that they have pursued, the stumbling blocks that they have navigated with a smile. Please tell us something about yourself, your time in school, your journey that you took after school, and your career journey. Uh, if you can share something about your personal life, your family, your hobbies, and all.
Yeah, okay. So, I was in school for a fairly long time, I mean, 12, 13 years. And I think 66, I think to 79. What are, the endearing memories of school? Of course, there was our principal, Mr. Deen Dayal.
Mhm.
Other memories include, when I was in junior school, the pond with turtles, with frogs, and aviary, which we had many kinds of birds. This is
Mhm.
the place where you have the work experience block now. And then there was this very nice gulmohar tree, which was in the front side of the junior block next to the headmistress's office.
Mhm.
And yes, I mean, lot of other memories of these, the competitions with modern school over hockey, essentially,
Mhm.
because hockey was the sport those days. Cricket in
Was
India
it?
had not really taken off,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and bunking to Sweets Corner.
Mhm.
Uh, that is also a memory. And working for a very very large multinational advertising company in
Mhm.
Gurgaon.
Mhm.
And then there was then finally I landed this job with the Mauritius Tourism Promotion Authority in 2014. So it's been a 6-year journey there.
Mhm.
That is the professional, in terms of what all I've done. In terms of family, my wife is also a dipsite. But she's from RK Puram. She's 84 batch,
Okay,
and
okay, that's
I
wonderful.
have two daughters who didn't go to DPS because
Okay.
I believe somewhere along the line that DPS changed its core values
Mhm.
from what it
Okay.
was at our
Mhm.
time.
Okay, thank you so much, Vivek. Gurpreet, now please take us through your journey, your time in school, and life thereafter.
Thanks for having me. It'll be very hard to follow up on that narration by Sir. That was very entertaining. So, as you know, I have an architectural practice based in Gurgaon. We design carbon rating friendly new buildings or retrofit old buildings to make them relevant for today's environment related concerns. So, we believe that if you can reuse an old building, then you can prevent demolishing and creating pollution, or preventing building another building in its place and creating more pollution. But that's now. You asked about my time in school. Well, I was a studious science section boy. Looks might not go that way, but respectable even in hostel. So bullied, washed a lot of clothes in the hostel, as you know
Okay.
how the hostel goes. So I remember the Gulmohar tree sir has described that. You know how the hostel environment was. Most of us, we were looking for some other excuse. There was hardly any free time. We were either playing, which was fixed hours, or we were studying, which was fixed hours. And it didn't matter whether we were good at a sport or not. We were all supposed to play something or the other. And there were so many sporting activities there: swimming, horse riding. You were doing something or the other. Um, but when we did a 12th, I wasn't really sure that I wanted to do architecture at that point. Riding on a good PCM score, I got into St. Stephen's somehow, but back of my mind, I knew that I wanted to do something in the construction industry, inspired by my family. My grandfather particularly, used to tell us that his team had built a part of the Lahore airport pre-partition and part of the Lahore railway station pre-partition. We could never confirm that documentary wise. My father was also a contractor for PWD, so quite a bit of Kurukshetra University campus was built by him. A lot of hospitals. So there was fair bit of family history in construction. But I wasn't sure that I wanted to get into contracts either. So you know how it is when you are 17 or 18. There's a lot of things going on. In Stephens, in fact, 3 or 4 of us, vagabonds, we got into this habit of taking unplanned train trips over the weekends. Just hop onto a train wherever it is going, and that 1 year got me interested into architecture, and then I got into it somehow. That's most of the times, in architecture colleges also, you, apart from studio work, you most of the times it's washing more clothes, cooking, cleaning, everything you have to do, because in the hostel you don't get the same facilities that a family would set up for you. After third year summer halls, I had started working with my teacher, MS Singh, who in our field has quite an aura about him. So he had himself interned under Louis Kahn when he was doing IIM Ahmedabad. So in our profession, he was quite a haloed name, and it was quite a start under him. So with him, I made HCL's Mr. Thadani's residence. And then later, after graduation, I joined Mr. Kaninde's office. He's as illustrious an architect as you can get in India, rest in peace. So I interned on the Delhi Lawn Tennis Association tennis stadium in STA, DCM Devu, Surajpur plant, and some housings here and there in Dwarka. And then, of course, the CBD Shahadra project, on which I spent almost 2 years there at Kaninde Saab's office. That's where, in fact, I picked up the nuances of urban design and architecture, which otherwise one would probably have to do a master's for. But I was then, by 96, dying to open my own consultancy. And in 1996, we opened up our own firm. And since then, we've been doing various projects, MNCs and local clients, mostly schools or corporate offices or industrial buildings, some hospitals, tourism ventures also. So anything to find a creative answer, a new way to make a building. I have great support from my partner and my best friend. I have 2 adorable daughters with her, and they inspire me every day in small ways. And family life is, of course, we go out a lot and we have a lot of fun. So that's it.
That one must do to start living a life of their perceived dreams. Like in your case, if I ask you, what did you do to start living a life of your dreams? I mean, while you were in school or at one stage, what was the dream and how did you live that dream?
That's a loaded question. I'm trying to still find my way in, so I don't want to misguide anybody.
Okay.
So I guess you just try to be happy and content with what you do, and not to pursue money for the sake of money. That can be a trap. But what works for me is striving for aesthetic creativity, because by chance I have a profession which goes for that, and that takes me wherever I'm supposed to be, I guess. But apart from that, it's not just your 8 hours of work. There's a lot of stuff which makes your life. And for generations, our families have been farmers. So I have been, my father is full-time into farming now after retirement. We have a small farm where we grow some crops organically and some veggies for ourselves and something for the market. So in my free time, I'm involved there also. And I guess it's a very fulfilling life with kids in school and the practice also going along. I don't think there's any time to think philosophically. I guess life just takes you on a daily basis. If one gets 10 or 12 hours to yourself, that's great.
So I'll ask the same question to Vivek. What are the things that one must do to start living a life of dreams?
You need to chill. That is the first thing. You need to enjoy. Think of life as a journey. If you keep focusing on the end result, then there will always be strife in your life. So, yes, there is a goal, there is a place you want to reach, but while you are going, enjoy the journey, enjoy the stops, on the way. Enjoy those pit stops. That keeps you sane. It is very essential. Otherwise, you will become totally unidimensional. And yes, you will fall. You will fall many times. You will have to, pick yourself up. There are times when, one wants to give up. Many instances, in school, then, I once decided to run something called the Rath Marathon. I don't know how many of you remember. There used to be the Rath Marathon by the makers of Rath Vanaspati. I didn't run the marathon. I decided to run the half marathon, which was 21 kilometers, which is quite a bit. And of course, being the way we are at age 25, 26, 27, I was something like that. Decided, yes, I will run every day. I will practice. But, if you are coming back home at 2 or 3 in the night after drinking half or 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey, then you'll be hard pressed to wake up in the morning and run. So hardly any running happened in terms of practice. But it was a question of, it was an ego issue. I had told everyone that I will finish the half marathon. It was more of an ego issue with my dad because, he used to always say, yaar, tum kehte bahut kuch ho, but you can't follow through. So anyway, my friends and I, a couple of my batchmates, other friends, we started. And, if you're a sports person, which I was, running the first 7-8 kilometers is not difficult, or 10 kilometers. And then it hits you. Then you want to give up. And there was, yes, a thought in my head, but not once, but many times, कि यार बहुत हो गया, छोड़ो. देखेंगे क्या होता है, ये और भागना possible नहीं है. Then I said, नहीं यार. If I've decided, I have, publicly stated that I will do this. I have to do it. I ran through the pain barrier, which took me maybe 2-3 more kilometers. And you conquered the pain and you ran. I mean, I didn't run, I jogged. But I jogged those 21 kilometers and came back. I mean, I got the certificate at the end. That was one instance where it's you have to have that, never say die. And, there have been many instances in my career. There was a time when I wasn't, doing so well. And one of, and at that time, there is, again, I'll come back to poetry by, very famous, the 2 lines by Faiz, which say, Dil naumid to nahi, naakaam hi to hai, lambi hai gam ki shaam, magar shaam hi to hai. So, things, all these things, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. There will always be a dawn. There is night every day, but the sun rises every morning. You have to be strong enough to endure what life is throwing at you. Every day will not be the same. You will not scale new peaks every day. So it's about endurance. So life is like a marathon. You have to do all these things, and there is nothing called, I mean, people say overnight success. There is nothing called overnight success. It takes years and years and years of hard work, and overnight success can only happen, in a lottery. For example, you persist, you persevere. I mean, this word persevere was the favorite word of Principal Deen Dayal. Some of you may remember. And, that is, I find a lot of my strength from the poetry. I've quoted Bachchan, I've quoted Faiz. And there is also Iqbal, who said, सितारों के आगे जहां और भी हैं, अभी इश्क के इम्तिहान और भी हैं. There have been many things happening in your life. You have to just go on with a never say die attitude.
So I'll ask the next question to you again, Vivek. As the saying goes, the biggest adventure that one can take is to live a life of one's dream. So how true is this in your case?
Okay, so I went to, I talk of Mauritius specifically since I head the tourism board in India and I've been doing it for 6 years. I always wanted to go back. I went there as a teenager. It never happened in spite of my best efforts. I went everywhere else but Mauritius. And when it started happening in 2014, it never ended. I mean, I in the last 6 years, maybe I've done 40 trips. It's a dream. There is, and my friends ask me, "Arey, फिर Mauritius जा रहा है, bore नहीं हो जाता है?" I said, "No, it's a dream. It's a dream that has come true for me. It's a land of positivity. So that that dream has to be alive. It will happen one day. I would ask the younger lot, don't be impatient. You have to wait it out."
Okay, I'll ask the same question to Gurpreet.
Yeah, adventure for different people means different things. If it means that you take up a challenge and you try and fulfill that or overcome that. So with fair experience, I have begun to realize that I've begun to realize a responsibility that those who can do, they must do. So we've been doing some voluntary pro bono advisory design for various gram panchayats in Haryana for organizing their villages, sanitation, basic health services, trying to organize village schools better with limited funds. And the sort of somersaults you have to go with bureaucracy and with government officials to be able to do that pro bono work is very, very adventurous. It's adventurous enough for us. So no mountaineering is required.
Can you share an instance with us where you almost gave up? Somewhere you actually changed the game, but did not let the game change you.
My life has been pretty much even keel so far. As self-employed, one rolls the dice every day and not knowing what is going to turn up. Winning or losing is part of the game, and so never felt disheartened enough to give up altogether. However, when the market crashed in 2008, we were doing some overseas consultancy at that time, and when those clients cancelled very heavy contracts and our courts and our judiciary did not stand up for us or support us, Indian entrepreneurs who were working abroad, we came under great pressure. And since staff is completely dependent on salaries alone, thankfully they were all very supportive and we were able to make it through with God's grace. It was a difficult time. But what I find even more challenging and disturbing is the administrative failure at so many levels, despite such a phenomenal talent pool that we have in our country, IAS officers driving on the same roads as you and me, but does not notice a manhole sticking out 1 foot out of the road. It's basic things. And that particular manhole or a tree jutting out of a road kills 10 or 12 people in the city. So I think those sorts of failures hit me more than any financial setbacks that one would have. Financial setbacks one can overcome. In business, losses and profits, they just keep coming and going. There's no need to feel disheartened over those. But somehow, somehow we are unable to compete with even small nations on development or infrastructure. So, but I guess we will get there soon enough when a generation chooses to put their collective resources for the country, service before self, so to speak. Maybe yes, that's more of a failure that I see, a collective failure for all of us rather than any individual.
Downturn actually almost got you, but you stood your ground. You were brave enough to pass your way through it.
You don't have an option when you have 25-30 people looking at you to create their salary every month. You don't have an option. Bravery is not an option. You have to think out of the box and somehow be able to cover those losses. That's what business is about.
So I'll go back to Vivek with the same question. Vivek, one instance where you almost gave up.
Okay, so I picked up, I volunteered for a very, very big project. Without having adequate knowledge of the subject. It was in my advertising days.
Okay.
And the company was in a bit of a strife because the team, which was being headed by the CEO of that particular part of that company, had left overnight because of some differences with the top management. And I volunteered to take that place and carry out that project. And there were times when I said, "Oh my God, what have I let myself in for? How will I do this?" And this was a very, very big international project for the International Olive Council. So I said, I worked day and night. My team was with me, and we did whatever was required to be done, and we completed a great program. The head of International Olive Council, which is part of the United Nations, who was a cabinet minister level person, he came down to India and we got our due, and he praised the job that we did. So that was one. And, I totally agree. Sometimes there is no option but to move forward. You cannot give up. I'd like to add, when Gurpreet said about the way our country is and things don't move, and someday people will realize and it will happen. I would like to say here that this Mauritius is very small as compared to India. The population is only 12.5 lakhs. The talent pool is not so big. But you know what? The infrastructure is amazing. Independent more than 70 years. Mauritius has been independent for only 50 years. And they are 3 times ahead of us in terms of per capita.
My next question, the overnight success usually takes several years. So if I were to ask you upfront, how many years did it take in your case?
25 years.
Okay. So Gurpreet, I come back to you with the same question.
Very kind of you to assume I'm successful. 5 years of training, 26 years of practice. I don't consider myself successful. There are a lot of career goals to achieve yet. A number of years will be required to reach there. But we are getting there. We'll be getting there. Like Vivek sir said, life is a journey. So we are on the journey. We don't have anything else to do.
What are your views on this redevelopment of the Central Vista project that's been commissioned in Delhi?
That seems to be an important plan on the national scale, and a number of seniors in the field are engaged. So, but from the fringes, it does look like an over-ambitious and misplaced fund allocation, especially when most of our villages and smaller towns are without proper sanitary or health or hospital education facilities. Maybe all this extravagance could have helped there. I never knew we had so much money to spare as a country, in fact, because whenever we've met local level administration, we've always been told there are no funds. Even for basic small things like, if we would propose that we'll design the improvements in the Gurgaon Civil Hospital pro bono, we won't charge anything, but at least let's make it sanitary. We'll always get this reply, we don't have any funds. So when I see that 30,000 crores has been allocated for renovating something which is already beautiful, it's probably the best area in the country, and there is a lot of place which is currently, it seriously requires improvement, and all these funds could have been spent there. So from the fringes, yes, it seems as if it's misplaced fund allocation. But again, I wouldn't want to hijack the issue from some seniors who've been working for months and months on both sides. So I'm sure a good decision will be made. A lot of intellectuals are involved right now.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Vivek. Tell us, what can India as a country do to promote, inbound tourism? Yeah.
The first thing we need is infrastructure.
Okay.
We sorely lack infrastructure. Whether it's roads, there'll be one stretch of road where you drive for 50 kilometers at 100 kilometers an hour, and suddenly, the highway disappears and you have to drive through a village where there are all sorts of people, hanging out on the road. There are potholes on the road. The infrastructure, whether in terms of roads, in terms of budget hotels of good quality, is not there. I'll give you another example. You're driving and you want to use the washroom facilities. To be very, very blunt, men will stand wherever and do their business. Tell me, what will women do? Neelam is listening. It is a big issue. The accommodation, and what we have done, we have everything in India. You have the world's highest peaks, you have the best beaches, you have desert, you have religious spaces which can be exploited. There are, you name it and we have it. But what have we done to what we have? Go to Shimla and see the condition. It used to be such a pristine and a beautiful place 40 years back, 45 years back. Now look at what has happened to Shimla, to Nainital, to Mussoorie.
Okay.
These were beautiful places. As a tourist, when I go somewhere, I am always looking at infrastructure. Infrastructure, safety. And I'm sorry, even India is not the safest country in the world to travel. If there are women travelers traveling alone, I wouldn't recommend India, not at all. Unless they are staying in a 5-star luxury resort and traveling by, the most expensive cars they can hire. Essentially, one major thing is infrastructure. and then we don't promote our country the way it should be promoted. I mean, we have some of the best golf courses in the world. How many golf tourists do we get in India? Hardly any. I mean, all people come to India is for the Taj Mahal, where it's a madhouse if you go there. Our monuments are not up to the mark in terms of preservation, barring very few. If you look at Delhi, if you look at the Delhi history of Delhi and the number of monuments we had, the monuments have simply disappeared. It's also government apathy.
Okay. Next question to you. Now that you have realized your dreams, so what is the next thing that you're planning?
There is, I will not say realized. I mean, dreams, this is an ongoing process. And you realize one thing, and maybe I'm looking for the next thing to do. And, maybe I will get into some kind of engagement with students. That is, I would love to teach students, and maybe I will get into that one day after this assignment. And yes, I have still a lot to learn in life. I have a lot of books to read. I have to meet a lot of people, a lot of my friends. So while I meet them regularly, I mean, we have our DIPSites group. We are on WhatsApp mostly these days because we can't meet. Otherwise, we used to try and meet at least once in 2 months, where 30, 40 of us from our batch would get together. And so lots to do still.
And that's wonderful. So Gurpreet, what next?
Well, like I said, our profession is such that a new challenge is thrown our way every week. Every new project is a new challenge. And we are nowhere near our final resting place. There are miles to go. But I do want to make some, and of course, here is where our paths cross. Like you picked up a very interesting topic about tourism. I would definitely like to contribute in making some project which is noteworthy and on an international scale, because there's hardly any project which in India, I mean, with the talent pool that we have close to 1 lakh architects working in India, maybe more. But we haven't been able to make a project which is on the international scale, like, Petronas Towers or Burj Khalifa. And it's not because of dearth of talent. It's just conditions. It's just lack of conditions where our creative people are probably not given that free hand which is required for creative people. And architecture is actually not really, as loose-ended as anything else. It's almost as structured as engineering is. So there's hardly any scope for you to go wrong. But like Sir has already said, our priority has not been infrastructure, and that's what I was trying to say when I said that we have allocated a huge amount of fund for an already nicely organized place, NDMC area, and that also CV area, which is probably the best looking place in the country. It's already a heritage zone. Now we are trying to repaint the living room of our house, which is already very nicely decorated, when the windows in the kitchen are leaking. Infrastructure in the roads and everywhere else, like he said, potholed roads. Maybe if all that money can go into infrastructure and fund allocation can be done wisely, then yes, the tourism sector can also come up. And of course, law and order situation is there. I mean, he's hit the nail right on the head. So I have already chosen what I want to do, and there's enough on the plate right now with some of the other project going on always at the panchayat level also, where those people, their sincerity is amazing, and they have funds also. It's not as if they don't have funds. Panchayats usually are quite flushed. But it's just that there is so much of difficulty reaching a consensus to do something worthwhile. People will always try a reason to, people are very wary. When you try to make a change, acceptance comes very, very slowly. Half the people say, no, this is not auspicious. Half the people say, no, this is not scientific. So those are the challenges that I want to fulfill, and I think if I am even 20% successful in doing that, then it will be a notable contribution. But right now, I think we are only 2 or 3% there, but we are trying.
Next question to you. When did you last visit school?
Oh, long time, long time. I mean, my friends, my batchmates and I decided, 2-3 years back when we made this WhatsApp group that we would like to go. But the school has become very bureaucratic. I mean, we were not even able to talk to the principal. We were, the secretary to the principal asked so many questions. It was like, a government office where they say you fill in form in triplicate or yahan se stamp lagwao, wahan se stamp lagwao. So I said, leave it, yeah. I mean, they don't seem to be interested in alumni anymore.
Okay.
And if this is the attitude, then I don't want to go back. Seriously.
Okay. As you just mentioned that you all have a WhatsApp group. So do you guys meet the batchmates? Do you guys meet quite regularly? What frequency?
Oh, so we used to meet once in 2 months, once in 3 months, pre-COVID days. So last we met was in, I think, sometime beginning of February. And then with COVID, everything's gone a bit haywire. But yes, we keep talking, and as soon as we are able to meet, we will meet.
Okay. Now, Gurpreet, when did you last visit DPS?
Oh, somewhere in the 90s, I think. It's not so easy to get into school with the security protocols, and rightly so. The safety of children is at stake. So, and we don't have parent ID cards or any ID cards to go in there now. I think during my time in school, I spent enough time outside the principal's office, so I have no such desire to meet the principal now. And fairly, with 25,000 kids having come out of DPS over the years, maybe more, I don't expect the principal to meet every time we turn up there. But yeah, once in a year, a nice alumni function would go a long way in connecting everybody back, because illustrious names and such a great talent pool has come out of DPS, and I hope we can get together and make some sort of platform.
Gurpreet, I come back to you with the same question. So do you meet your batchmates or schoolmates regularly?
Not for a lot of years, but now with WhatsApp and Facebook, connections have been made, and there have been a few very energizing get-togethers, and we're getting to know our classmates all over again as grown-up people.
Do you have any message to give to the DPS alumni community?
Stay positive.
Okay.
Strive for bigger things. And the world is big. You can do whatever you want to do. It's not too difficult to achieve. You have to keep trying. I mean, there is no shortcut to success.
Like I said already, there are a lot of illustrious names there, and it's a great talent pool. And I hope that we can, join hands and do something really productive. Like corporates have a social CSR activity going. Maybe DPS alumni can also organize a CSR activity going, and we can in some way, even in one city, if we can improve the living conditions of a few, or we can contribute in making that city a better place, then I think that will go a long way. We can all just contribute in small ways, and of course somebody gifted can come up with a brighter and much bigger plan, and we're always there, but that group needs to get going first.
I'm sure that will help a lot of us. So with this, I thank you both for your time and patience. I'll now open the group.
First question is to Vivek. In order to promote tourism in India, we need to work seriously on the infrastructure.
Yes,
so
we do.
Yeah. So, and because I feel that if we don't work on this, the tourism will never flourish.
I don't know. I really don't know how serious the government is about the inbound tourism, because inbound tourism can get you huge revenues. But from what I've seen over the last 30-40 years, there has been, we are going at a snail's pace. And this is not the way to go about it.
Correct.
But I guess the government has its own ideas, they have their own priorities, and tourism, inbound tourism, is not a priority. So let's
Yeah.
leave it at that. God has blessed the country that we have everything. I mean, otherwise,
Yeah.
if you want to see mountains, you go to Alps. You want to go to,
Correct.
you want to see desert, you go to Middle East. You want the sea, you go somewhere
Yeah.
else. You want to see
Yeah.
life, you go to Africa. But here in India, we have everything, and
Yeah.
yet there is nothing in terms of tourism
Correct.
revenues.
See, I tell you, when you go through India, I think there's so much to see in India. And
There is
I mean, yeah, and people don't spend money here, on tourism. They like to go abroad, they like to visit different countries. Whereas if you go to our mountains, I think they are as beautiful as outside. That I
yeah.
see no difference. Gurpreet, you are a very innovative guy. I went through the entire conversation of yours, and I heard that you even restructure the old buildings, and you try to find solutions to the old buildings. That's what I could get. And what do you think that the old buildings repairing and then putting them back to order? Do you think that they still can last for another 50, 60 years?
Well, Taj Mahal has been there for 450.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right on your. But I'm talking about the old buildings in Karol Bagh and Chandni Chowk and all those. Do you do the testing before? That whether they can be,
The first,
redone?
yeah. Thank you for that question. I think first of all, as professionals, one needs to analyze whether that building is worth saving. Because most of the buildings that you are talking about in Karol Bagh are illegally built. And if those buildings are illegally built, then maybe a lot of safety features are not there and they're built poorly. If a building is built poorly, then there's no point spending further, because retrofitting is also not cheap. Retrofitting, see, I'll tell you, there are two components. One is the structural component where you have an RCC or a metalwork skeleton. And
Okay.
then there is a surface finishes, wall finishes, ceiling finishes and all those things. There are two components to a building. So the component B of finishes, you will have to do all over again.
Okay.
So if you have a basic quality of the structure, then only it's worth it. But there are a lot of buildings which were built very nicely, but
Correct.
today have their land use has changed. For example, I'll give you an example. In Gurgaon, you have a lot of factory buildings. But industry in Gurgaon has gone down over the years, and a lot of factories have been now converted due to government policy. Architecture is also, the way a cityscape changes is also dependent on the
Correct.
way government regulation comes in. So they've sent in a regulation that if you get your factory approved as an IT office space, then your FAR increases, and everybody wants to do that. So once that happens, then if the quality of the building is good, then we try and save it and retrofit it with solar panels and air conditioning systems so that the structure can be changed, but the layouting and all can still be very innovatively changed. So that's almost 50% of the cost saved. And that for small operations sometimes goes a long way. It's the difference between success and failure, because eventually the bottom line is about costs and profits.
Yeah, very creative, I must say. One more question to you, Gurpreet. You said that when you were 18 in school and you had your weekends and you used to jump into any train, any bus and used to go, for a holiday or maybe a trip. That's something which is very rare of those times, I mean, something which is very unusual, I would say, when you are in school, because parents are like restrictive about things like this.
So that didn't happen in school, ma'am. That happened in my first year in Delhi University, St. Stephen's College.
Yeah, then
we couldn't take that risk. We couldn't take that risk in the boarding house with the dope moving around every 2 hours with a cane in his hand. So I don't think we could have done that. Yeah. But in those days, a lot of things could be done by a lot of us because we didn't have Netflix and we didn't have WhatsApp and we didn't have cell phones. So to pass time, you just had to either read books or to play sports. or
Yeah.
to do something like this. And if 3 or 4 boys get together, then you know how it is if one idea comes up and the group goes that way. And we went once or twice and we enjoyed it. And in those days, you know, with limited budgets, train trips seemed to be quite a nice way out.
I remember
That's
in the college years, we had these college trips, you know, to Kashmir, you know, even to foreign countries. And there were a whole lot of girls and boys going during the same time. I mean, I think those days were more of entertainment like this than the Netflix. I mean, there is a lot of difference between today and those days. What do you have to say? Was that better or this is
Well,
better?
we are lucky. When we had young knees, we roamed around as much as we could, and now that we have old knees, we can sit and enjoy Netflix.
That's
So
very
we've
wisely said.
done everything. I think that way our generation has been very, very fortunate.
Yeah, in the sense, you know, I think what I really liked hearing, in fact, I know both these two handsome gentlemen otherwise also, but hearing them talk about some very finer points has been a revelation. So essentially life about the dreams, life is about dreams only. And, you know, I have seen that part coming out from both these two gentlemen. So it's not a question, it's an observation that Gurpreet seems to be more on the fun side. You know, he said they would hop onto trains, go here, go there, look out for things. So they had more of an inquisitive kind of a mind. And of course, you have to be serious and hardworking also. But that was the fun part of the dream. And from Vivek, I picked up that overnight success usually takes 25 years. So that's the philosophical part of it. So basically, a dream is fun and it's, you know, a little bit of philosophy.
A mix of both.
A mixture of both. And I think both these two gentlemen seem to have acquitted themselves really well. And of course, since life is a journey, it continues every day. You know, COVID or no COVID, life does move on. And, you know, the dream also continues. So great. I think thanks a lot. I mean, you guys were really wonderful. You really opened your hearts out. I'm sure a lot of people will be very happy to hear and perhaps even surprised to hear a lot of things which you might have shared here and may have shared with them personally, whether, you know, in WhatsApp or over a drink. And for that, I'm extremely grateful to both of you. Thank you very much. Back to Ashish.
Thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. Great initiative, sir. It was almost as if the mothership is calling us back.
That's so kind of
Thanks
you.
a lot.
And thank you so much for joining in.